There is a free alternative to therapy, and it is journaling. I have oh, now they're out of order. I have all of my journals here, and I have been journaling for the past, I would say 10 years. Actually, no, I would say maybe it's been 11 years. I think it was started in 2014 when I finally began somewhat consistently journaling. And by that I mean that I did journal when I was younger, with a few journals here and there, and I had this Winnie the Pooh one. But I will be honest, I was never consistent. I would write the most random things. Sometimes I was just writing poetry or songs or like look scraps of paper were just opportunities for me to fill up space. But I did have one journal that I would kind of come back to. And the reason why I don't count that for the timeline of me journaling is because something happened. I wish I knew what happened, but something happened, I think in middle school or high school, and there was a day where I ripped out all of the pages. Every single and it was thick. Then I ripped out all of the pages, and I don't know if I burned them, threw them out, ripped them up, but I destroyed that journal. But part of me does get curious from time to time, like, what happened? What happened? But I will never know. And then I didn't journal again until 2014. So I have journal upon journal, journal. I have so many journals now because when I finally started in 2014, that was when I was more grown. I was older, so I was more consistent, and I wrote practically every single day. And when I tell you that this is therapy, I mean it. And of all the things for me to push or to encourage, isn't it cheaper? This is your cheapest alternative to therapy. And here's the reason why it's a good alternative. If you don't have the money for therapy, if you're not sure you really need to go to therapy, try journaling first. So, let me get into reasons why I suggest journaling. And even if you don't think that you need therapy, just journal. What I love about journaling is being able to look back at who I was way back when and to remember moments that I had completely forgotten about. Because a lot of times in our mind, we get so caught up in the negative things that have happened, we'll remember the horrible days, but I get to look back at my journals and randomly stumble on a day that was really good, where I went for a walk, a bird landed on my shoulder, and I felt the sun on my face, and I just came home smiling. I get to look back on days where I met up with a certain friend and we just laughed all day and we connected and we just had a ball. I get to look back on days where the most unexpected, random, but pleasant thing happened. And these are things that I would normally forget about because, of course, the negative things stand out so much more. But now I have constant access to them. I actually go back through my journals regularly. I go back through them especially around the time of my birthday, leading up to it. I'm like, let me just see what I was doing around this time last year, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. And sometimes if I'm feeling down or I'm just feeling bored, I will do that. I'll be like, let's see what I was up to 6 months ago. And you'll be surprised at things that you forget, even for a couple of months. You will be surprised. But I also like looking back at my journals and seeing how much I've grown, seeing how far I've come, the things that used to bother me that don't anymore, the things I used to struggle with that I don't anymore, the things that I thought I wasn't going to overcome that I did overcome. That's another thing. I get to look back at situations and like I think too, especially when you're younger, there are things that happen and you think this is the end of the world. I'm going to fail this class and it's going to be the end of the world. I'm going to miss a deadline for this and it's going to be the end of the world. And I get to look back at everything that was not the end of the world and realize that everything works out. There were times that things were happening, whether it was with family, whether it was with friends, whether it was at school, or someone else was going through something, and it felt like everything was going wrong, or maybe it just felt like I couldn't get myself together in time. and I get to look back and be like, "Oh yeah, that got handled." I don't even remember how that got handled. And sometimes I will go through this journal looking for how did that get resolved? And I have no clue. It just got resolved. It just got resolved. And for me, it puts things into perspective because I have people in my life who like to stress. They like to be stressed. But I have had my journals and I've been blessed to look back at every single huge thing that stressed me out in the past that no longer matters at all. It's not even something that comes to mind now, but I get to look back and be like, "Yo, I was stressed. I was overwhelmed with the situation, and now it's just a memory." When you get to write these things down, you get to realize, when you look back, at least, you get to realize it might not have been a big deal, but overall in life, in the world, there are highs and there are lows. There are things go wrong and things go well, but everything works out in the end. Everything works out. It might not go back to the way that you knew it, but it will come back to some kind of middle. Like, trouble doesn't last always, okay? But even when you are writing in your journal, like when I've been writing in my journal, I've also come to realize it helps me figure out how important something is. Sometimes I will be mad about a situation, and as I start writing it in my journal, I realize it's actually not that big of a deal. I will be writing situations like, and then only to realize on paper, this sounds so stupid. This sounds so stupid. But there are also times where I am in the middle of writing something and I'm like, and this, and I'm feeling angry all over again. And that's when I realize, no, I am justified in my anger. I am justified in this emotion. It's almost like when you are talking to someone else about a situation. When you're saying it out loud and you're realizing just how stupid it sounds, you're like, you know what? Never mind. Or you're saying it out loud and you're getting fired up all over again. If this can make me mad twice, it's bad. It was bad. And I was justified. And the same thing happens when I look back, when I go back in time in my journals. I get to sometimes in that moment I really still thought I was justified, but I get to look back and be like, "Oh girl, it was not that deep. It was not." But in that moment, at that time, it was. But then sometimes I look back over my journals and I'm reading entries and I'm getting fired up again. And for an example, there were situations I had where I had certain people in my life who I didn't realize at the time were treating me poorly, but it all came to a head at some point, and I was writing in my journal. And I looked back at those entries and I could feel the anger rising up in me because it really was frustrating. And sometimes I can look back at these entries and be more frustrated now than I was back then because I will have a bigger perspective on things now than I did back then. And I'll realize, no, there are other things that you should have been upset about, but that you were just too kind, you were just too nice, or yeah, I also get to look back and get angry at things now that I wasn't angry about back then. And all of it isn't about anger, but these are just the first emotions that come to mind when when I think about this. I get to look back and realize that I took certain things a lot more easily than I would now, and because I get that broader perspective of I'm looking at all of these days. I'm reading through a month quickly and I get to see it all unfold rapidly and see that this was actually a very frustrating or sad situation. Whereas in the moment you're thinking to yourself, it's not that big of a deal, it's not that big of a deal. You get to sleep on it. You get angry or you get frustrated or you feel something, but then time and sleep and food and you know a bit of space lets you forget about that temporarily. But when you get to look back at your journals, you get to see it for what it really is. All at once, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I have also been able to, and I think I did kind of say this earlier, but I've been able to look back and notice my weaknesses or the areas of growth that I would want for myself. I sometimes do that where I look back and I'm like, oh, it seems like I was kind of struggling with this, or I needed to work on this. And then I'll think to myself, well, is it just past tense or is it now too? And then I'll get to say, oh, it seems like I do need to work on that even now. And instead of just going through life not knowing what you're struggling with, you get to look back and know, I seem to struggle with having boundaries, or I seem to struggle with um making better friends with the criteria that I have for friendship. And then I get to move forward with that in mind and make better decisions. I also noticed that when I first started, I kind of just wrote down everything. I wrote down everything. I would write down what I ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I would write down look, if I knew and if I could, I would probably write down the temperature outside, the weather. The weather felt like this today. I no, I was kind of obsessive in the beginning, but you don't have to journal like that. And everyone has their own journaling styles. I have my journals that are daily journals now that over time I have loosened up and become less obsessive, where I try to just write about the things that I actually want to remember about the day. Yeah, but it essentially, when you're journaling, if you're just doing like a daily journal, you would want to write like the most important aspects of the day. But if you're like me, in the beginning, I kind of took everything as important. I was like, maybe I will want to know that I ate a banana this morning in 20 years. But over time, I realized no, what I actually want to remember is is how did I feel when I woke up this morning? If I have a daily routine, I'm not going to write it every single entry. I'm just going to write, did the routine. And if I made something special, I'm going to be like, oh, I actually took the time to make this thing. And I now write more of how I'm feeling, and yeah, how I'm feeling, and how not just facts, but more so more emotions and goals, and whether I'm saying, oh, so I didn't get a chance to do this, but I kind of want to do this more, or um, today felt really great. I had a great conversation with so and so, and the high what I now view more as my highlights. So if you struggle with kind of obsessing over every single detail, just write, and over time you'll start to see what isn't as important. It'll all kind of fade away. How it happened for me is that because I was so obsessive and I was writing every single day and I was writing every single detail, sometimes I would miss a day, and then it would end up becoming weeks, months before I wrote again, because I felt like I had to fill myself in on each and every single thing. So each time I kind of came back from a space, I ended up writing less and less and less until it was down to what was most important. So now that I'm less obsessive, it's actually easier for me to get back into writing and just give the highlights of the days that I missed, or to just write down a quick paragraph of the day. I can be like, I woke up, nothing exciting happened. I did have a brief conversation with so and so. I worked on this and worked on that, and I'm glad with the progress that I made. Sometimes that's all I want to write. Sometimes I just want to write, we got things done. And because I have been doing this, I also notice that there's a difference when I don't. Why? Because it's therapy. It really is. When you become less obsessive about it, it does help you clarify your thoughts. You're writing down your feelings about something, and then you're like, well, where did this start? Where did this argument start? Where did this feeling come from? I'm feeling down because this and this and this, like it started with that, someone said something, and the reason why it rubbed me the wrong way is because blah 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 blah. And and you start to kind of get to unfold these things. Isn't that what you would do in therapy anyway? Right? You sometimes you just need to put it into words instead of just having this feeling floating around. Sometimes you just need to put things into words. And I notice that when I don't journal, I feel as if all my days are kind of colliding and combining together. That it's harder for me to figure out what happened Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. It's harder for me to figure out those differences, because when I am journaling, I am taking that time to be like, what was special about today? What happened today that I would want to remember, that I would want to take the time to write about? Of course, I'm sure other people have their own ways of doing this. Not everyone has to journal, but I am saying that if you want to have more clarity of thought and you want to do therapy, but you can't afford it, I highly, highly, highly recommend journaling. In fact, I kind of do two forms of journaling, although not consistently. So, what I started doing is I do have my journal where I just talk about generic days, but I also have a therapy journal where if something is really weighing on me, there's something that's bothering me, there's an emotion that I'm kind of perusing through, I put that in my therapy journal. And sometimes I just write in the top left corner before I continue what exactly it is that I want to address. And I just kind of like get as honest as I can possibly get about how I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, like whatever it is that I want to just kind of uncover until I feel like I've covered it all. I feel this way because of this, and I think it's coming from this, but maybe it's coming from that. Like it could be me. It could be maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not in my head. Maybe it's not my fault. And I honestly feel like I it feels like a weight is lifted off of me each time. Not because anything's necessarily been solved, but because it's off my chest. And I feel like maybe half of what people are going through is the problem of you've kept everything inside and everything's bottled up and you haven't told it to anyone, not even yourself. So, I'm not saying don't do therapy if you can afford it, but I am saying like maybe try journaling. Maybe try it. You don't have to, but like maybe maybe try it. Anything else I wanted to say about journaling? Also, maybe I have too much pride in myself, but I kind of also do look forward to the day when I can when my children can like peruse through my journal and be like, "Oh my gosh, what a life you lived, grandma." What a life you lived, mom. What a life you lived, grandma. Me, dead and gone, my great great grandkids going, now why do I need to know that she ate a banana that day? But as they carry on, they'll be like, ooh, she went where? She did what? In that same vein, I think I should also add that I don't know if I'll if I wanna, does it count as therapy? Does it count as journaling? I count it as journaling. In that same vein, I will say that I do a third thing as well. A lot of those things are dealing with the past and present, but I also write dear future me letters, and I do it whenever I remember. And these dear future me letters, go you can go online, go on Dr. Google and type dearfutureme.com, and you can make an account and you can write letters to your future self that get sent to you via email at the time that you decide, whether that's 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. I think there's an option for 2 years. And then they also have an option for you can pick your own time. And I write these letters to myself. And in a way for me when I'm writing them, it's like I get to send my hopes for future me. In the beginning, it was like, I hope you have this job, you're doing this, like money's like whatever. But as I've gotten older, there's been a shift in the kind of letters that I send to myself where I'm like, I hope you're healed. I hope you're happy. I hope you're doing well. Like don't worry about these other things. Like I hope you're unstressed. I hope you still got that light in your eyes. I write things like that because as I write these letters to future me, and as I begin receiving them, which I've been receiving them, and then I kind of go back over them and I reread them a lot. I It's almost like I've become my best friend through all of these forms of journaling, through telling myself the truth about how I feel about things, and through like, finding out the most important things I want to write about my day, but also through encouraging my future self and receiving that encouragement from my past self, knowing that even if you're the person who's rooting for you, that's still someone that's rooting for you. And I find that to be very therapeutic. So, try it, try any of these, and if you do try any of these, let me know. Let me know. If anything, and you're not really a journaling kind of person, then I definitely recommend to try writing the Dear Future Me letters, because those don't have to be long. They don't have to be any kind of length. You can write whatever you want to your future self. So try it. Try it. Also, remember that in order to journal, you don't have to journal a specific way. You can look up other kinds of journaling. I just do the what happened in my day journals. But otherwise, it's time for me to go. I hope you try it. I hope you try it if you don't have the time or energy or money for therapy, or if you don't trust therapy. Because let's also keep in mind that the mind is a powerful thing and you got to be careful who you give that power to. Okay. All right. Enough said. Bye bye.